The rancher noticed whip marks on his black cook as she silently ladled stew. What he did next shocked the West. "Good Lord, who did this to you?" he gasped, his calloused hands trembling. The townsfolk saw only another broken soul destined for servitude, their whispers cutting deeper than any lash. They assumed the quiet woman would fade into obscurity, cleaning and cooking until her bones gave out. But the weathered cattleman recognized something unsettling in her refined posture, the way she moved like someone accustomed to giving orders rather than taking them. Hidden beneath her humble facade lay secrets that could destroy the corrupt sheriff who delivered her like damaged goods. Her elegant undergarments and mysterious 30-day deadline suggested a life far beyond this dusty nowhere. Would her dangerous past consume them both? Or would an unlikely alliance shatter the very foundations of their unforgiving frontier town? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The wagon wheels kicked up clouds of dust as they rolled into Cedar Ridge. Amara Valete sat straight-backed despite the rough wooden seat, her calloused hands folded in her lap. The other passengers had shifted away from her during the long journey, their sideways glances speaking volumes. Sheriff Lou Dawes waited at the general store, his badge catching the late afternoon sun. His pale eyes assessed Amara like livestock at auction. The wagon driver barely looked at her as she climbed down, her single cloth bag clutched tight. "This the one?" Dawes asked. "That's her. Paid passage from Sacramento." Dawes nodded and gestured for Amara to follow. She walked behind him through the main street, aware of curtains twitching in windows. A woman sweeping her porch stopped mid-motion to stare. Two men outside the saloon paused their conversation. "Where exactly are we going?" Amara's voice carried an unexpected refinement that made Dawes turn. "Graves Ranch. You'll work as cook, room and board, small wages. Better than you deserve." The words stung, but Amara kept walking. She'd endured worse. Samson Graves emerged from his barn as they approached. His weathered face showed surprise at the visitor. Hay clung to his shirt sleeves and his boots were caked with mud. He looked like a man trying to hold too much together with too little help. "Sheriff, this about the cook position?" "Found you someone." "Amara here needs honest work." Dawes emphasized the word needs in a way that suggested charity rather than employment. Samson studied her face. Something about her bearing didn't match Dawes' implications. She met his gaze directly, no hint of submission in her dark eyes. "You have experience cooking for ranch hands?" "I can prepare meals for any number of people." Again, that refined speech pattern. Dawes stepped closer to Samson. "Listen, Graves. She's had some trouble. Needs guidance. Keep her busy. Keep her here. Understand?" The warning carried weight. Samson nodded slowly, though questions flickered across his features. "Rooms behind the kitchen. Meals at dawn, noon, and sunset. Can you handle that?" "Yes, sir." Dawes mounted his horse. "I'll check on things regular. Make sure everything stays peaceful." After he rode away, Samson showed Amara to her quarters. The small room contained a narrow bed, wash basin, and single window facing the mountains. She set her bag on the wooden chest and surveyed the space without complaint. "Breakfast at 5, Samson said. "Coffee first, then whatever you can manage with what's in the pantry." That evening, Amara explored the kitchen. The previous cook had left behind basic supplies but little imagination. She found flour, salt pork, beans, and dried vegetables. Working by lamplight, she prepared a simple but well-seasoned stew. When Samson tasted it the next morning, his eyebrows rose. The flavors were complex, expertly balanced. This wasn't frontier cooking. "Where'd you learn to cook like this?" Amara hesitated. "Here and there." Over the following days, a pattern emerged. Townspeople treated Amara with casual cruelty disguised as Christian charity. The preacher's wife brought old clothes with exaggerated kindness. The general store owner made her wait while serving other customers first. Children threw pebbles and scattered when she looked their way. But Samson noticed things others missed. The way she automatically calculated portions for his struggling herd. How she suggested cost-saving measures that actually improved efficiency. Her handwriting, glimpsed on a shopping list, showed educated penmanship. Eulalie Stoddard arrived Thursday morning with fabric samples for curtains. The young seamstress had honey-colored hair and quick green eyes that missed nothing. She studied Amara with undisguised curiosity. "You're the new cook everyone's talking about." "I suppose so." "Funny thing. Mrs. Braidcaw, Henderson says you speak like you've been to school. That true?" Amara focused on kneading bread. "I can read and write if that's what she means." Eulalie lingered, clearly hoping for more information. When none came, she gathered her samples and left with obvious disappointment. That afternoon brought unexpected visitors. 3 rough-looking men rode up demanding food and water. Their leader, a thick-set man with cruel eyes, dismounted and approached Amara where she hung laundry. "Well, well, what do we have here?" Samson emerged from the barn, hand resting on his rifle. "Something I can help you gentlemen with?" "Just admiring your help, Graves. Fine-looking woman." The tension stretched taut. Amara continued hanging clothes, but her movements became careful, measured. She'd faced situations like this before. "I suggest you water your horses and move on," Samson said quietly. The leader grinned but remounted. As they rode away, one called back, "Might see you again real soon." That evening, Samson found Amara in the kitchen preparing dinner. She moved with unusual stiffness, favoring her left shoulder. When she reached for a high shelf, her shawl shifted. Raw welts crossed her back in parallel lines, recent, deep enough to have bled. The ladle clattered to the floor. "Good Lord, Amara! Who did this to you?" She spun around, clutching the shawl closed. Her eyes held fear mixed with something else. Resignation, perhaps, or calculation. "It's nothing, Mr. Graves. Those are whip marks, fresh ones." His voice carried barely controlled anger. "Was it those men today?" "No, sir. This happened before I came here." "Before?" The implications hit him. "You mean Dawes brought you here like this?" Amara's silence answered everything. Samson felt pieces of a larger puzzle shifting in his mind. The sheriff's warnings, her refined speech, the way she flinched whenever hoofbeats approached. "There's more to your story, isn't there?" She met his eyes for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight of hidden truths and desperate gambles. "Mr. Graves, there are things you don't understand. Things that could put you in danger just for knowing them." "What kind of things?" "The kind that get people killed." Samson couldn't sleep that night. The image of those welts burned in his mind. He'd seen men beaten for cattle rustling, for cheating at cards, for a dozen frontier crimes. But this felt different, calculated, personal. At dawn, he found Amara already preparing breakfast. She moved carefully, protecting her injured back. The coffee smelled better than anything his previous cook had managed in 2 years. "We need to talk." She didn't look up from the bacon. "Talking gets people hurt, Mr. Graves. Not talking might get you killed." That stopped her. She set down the spatula and faced him. In the morning light, he could see exhaustion etched around her eyes. This woman was carrying more than physical wounds. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." Amara studied his face. Whatever she saw there seemed to tip some internal balance. She walked to her room and returned with a small cloth bundle. Her hands shook as she unwrapped it. Samson expected to see jewelry, maybe a few coins. Instead, legal documents spilled across the kitchen table. Property deeds, business licenses, bank statements showing amounts that made his ranch look like pocket change. The name on every paper read the same: Amara Villete, proprietor. Villette's Restaurant, San Francisco. She pointed to the largest document. "I built it from nothing. Started with a food cart, saved every penny, reinvested everything." Samson picked up a bank statement. The numbers didn't make sense. This woman owned more than most men in Cedar Ridge would see in 10 lifetimes. How does a successful businesswoman end up as my cook? Because Sheriff Dawes decided my success was inconvenient. The story came out in careful pieces. Lou Dawes had been a marshal in San Francisco before coming to Cedar Ridge. He'd approached Amara with an offer to buy her restaurant for half its value. When she refused, the harassment began. Inspectors found violations that didn't exist. Suppliers canceled contracts without explanation. Customers received warnings about eating there. I had documents proving the harassment, was ready to take them to federal authorities. Amara's voice hardened. That's when Dawes made his final offer. Sell to his associates or face consequences. The whipping. 3 of his men cornered me behind the restaurant. Said it was a lesson in cooperation. She touched her shoulder unconsciously. When I still refused to sell, Dawes had me arrested on fabricated charges, transported here as an undesirable. Samson felt anger building in his chest. And everyone thinks you're just another drifter needing charity. Exactly what he wanted. While I'm stuck here playing cook, his people are stealing everything I built. She showed him another document. A legal notice dated 30 days from her arrival in Cedar Ridge. If she didn't appear in San Francisco to contest the proceedings, her business partners could declare her legally dead and sell all assets. 22 days left. The kitchen fell silent, except for the tick of the wall clock. Each second brought her closer to losing everything. Samson studied the woman across from him. The refined speech, the business knowledge, the way she calculated costs and managed resources. It all made sense now. Why tell me this? Because you're the first person who's treated me like a human being instead of a problem to be managed. Dawes threatened me to keep you here. He's part of this. Amara nodded. He's done this before. Find successful people who won't be missed, destroy their lives, steal their assets. I'm just the latest. Footsteps on the porch interrupted them. Samson quickly gathered the documents as Eulalie Stoddard appeared at the kitchen door. Her cheerful expression faded when she saw their tense faces. I brought those curtain samples you wanted. She set down her sewing basket. Everything all right? Fine, Samson said too quickly. Eulalie's sharp eyes moved between them. Funny thing, was talking to Mrs. Patterson yesterday. She mentioned seeing Sheriff Dawes burning papers behind his office. Big pile of them. Amara and Samson exchanged glances, evidence being destroyed. Also heard he's been asking questions about you, Mr. Graves. Wants to know if your cook is causing any trouble. The warning was clear. Dawes was watching. Eulalie stepped closer to the table. Her gaze landed on a partially visible document before Samson could cover it completely. Her eyes widened. Those are property deeds. Silence stretched between them. Eulalie looked at Amara with new understanding. You're not really a cook, are you? Before anyone could answer, horses thundered into the yard. Through the window, they saw Dawes dismounting with 2 deputies. His expression was harder than usual. Hide everything, Samson whispered. Amara swept the documents into her apron as Dawes entered without knocking. His pale eyes surveyed the kitchen, looking for something specific. Morning, Graves. Just checking on your help. She's working out fine. Good. Good. Dawes approached Amara. You settling in well? Yes, sir. Not getting any ideas about leaving? Some folks get restless. Start thinking the grass is greener elsewhere. The threat was unmistakable. Amara kept her eyes down. No, sir. I'm grateful for the work. Dawes smiled without warmth. Glad to hear it. Because leaving without permission would be breaking your parole terms. That carries serious consequences. He turned to Samson. Hope you're keeping proper supervision. Wouldn't want any misunderstandings about her status here. After Dawes left, Eulalie stared at both of them. What kind of trouble are you people in? Amara made a decision. She pulled out one of the business licenses and set it on the table. Eulalie read it twice before the reality sank in. You own a restaurant worth thousands of dollars and you're here cooking beans and bacon? Not by choice. Then why don't you just leave? Samson answered. Because Dawes will hunt her down and drag her back. Or worse. Eulalie sat heavily in a chair. This is about more than just you, isn't it? He's stealing from other people too. Probably. And you two are planning to do something stupid about it. They didn't answer, which was answer enough. Eulalie stood and walked to the window. She watched the dust settling where Dawes had ridden away. When she turned back, her expression had changed. "Then, you're going to need help." Ulali's offer hung in the air like smoke from a campfire. Amara studied the young seamstress, weighing risks against possibilities. Trust had become a luxury she couldn't afford. Yet here was someone willing to step into danger for a stranger. "You don't understand what you're offering. I understand enough. Dawes is stealing from people and getting away with it because nobody fights back." Ulali's voice carried unexpected steel. "Maybe it's time someone did." Samson leaned against the kitchen counter. "This isn't some adventure story, Miss Stoddard. If Dawes suspects we're working against him, people will get hurt. People are already getting hurt. You think Amara is the first person he's done this to?" The question settled over them like dust after a stampede. Amara pulled out her documents again, spreading them across the table with new purpose. "We need to know how many others there are, and we need proof of what he's doing." Over the next 3 days, they developed a careful routine. Amara continued her role as cook, but now she listened differently to conversations. Ranch hands gossiped about townspeople. Suppliers shared stories about businesses that had failed suddenly. Every piece of information got stored away. Ulali proved invaluable. As the town seamstress, she visited nearly every household. Women talked freely around her, sharing complaints and concerns they'd never voice publicly. She learned about the blacksmith who'd owned his own shop until legal troubles forced him to work for someone else. The schoolteacher who'd become a saloon cleaner after accusations destroyed her reputation. Samson used his standing as a longtime rancher to ask casual questions. Which families had left town suddenly? Who had Dawes helped with their problems? The answers painted a disturbing pattern. "At least 6 people in the past 2 years," he reported during one of their secret meetings. All of them had something Dawes or his associates wanted. Property, businesses, skills. Amara nodded grimly. The method is always the same. Legal harassment, fabricated charges, forced relocation or labor. By the time anyone realizes what happened, the victims are gone and the assets are transferred. How do we prove it? We need his records, financial documents, correspondence, anything that shows the pattern. Ulali set down her coffee cup. "I might be able to help with that. Mrs. Dawes hired me to make new curtains for their house. I could look around while I'm measuring windows." "Too dangerous," Samson said immediately. "Everything we're doing is dangerous. At least this way we might actually find something useful." That afternoon, Amara demonstrated why she'd built a successful business empire. She reorganized Samson's entire ranch operation in 2 hours. New schedules for feeding cattle, better rotation of grazing areas, streamlined supply ordering that would save him hundreds of dollars. "Where did you learn all this?" Samson watched her sketch out improved barn layouts with professional precision. Same principles as running a restaurant: efficiency, cost control, planning ahead. She looked up from her drawings. "I started with nothing, Mr. Graves. Had to learn fast or fail fast." "Tell me about that." Amara's expression grew distant. "Came west with my family when I was 16. Lost them to fever the first winter. Had 2 choices, give up or fight." She shrugged. Fighting seemed more interesting. "So, you started with a food cart." "Borrowed money for ingredients, cooked what I knew, learned what I didn't, saved every penny, reinvested everything. Took 5 years to afford a real location." Pride crept into her voice. "By year 10, I owned the whole block." Samson understood now why Dawes had targeted her. Success like that threatened men who preferred the world to stay predictable. Ulali returned that evening with disturbing news. She'd found documents in Dawes's study, but couldn't get close enough to read them properly. However, she'd overheard a conversation between Dawes and his wife. "They're expecting visitors next week. Someone important from San Francisco." Amara went very still. "What kind of visitors?" "Business associates, from what I could tell. Something about finalizing paperwork." The deadline. 18 days left, and Dawes's people were coming to complete the theft of her restaurant. Amara felt the walls closing in. "We need to move faster." Samson shook his head. "We need to be smarter. Rushing gets people caught." Being careful gets people robbed. Their argument was interrupted by hoofbeats in the yard. Not Dawes this time, but 3 men Amara recognized with a chill. The same ones who delivered her beating in San Francisco. "Back door," Sampson whispered. "Now!" But it was too late. The leader kicked open the kitchen door just as they scrambled to hide the documents. His scarred face split into an ugly grin. "Well, well. Having a little meeting, are we?" 2 more men entered behind him. All 3 carried guns, though they didn't draw them yet. The threat was clear enough. "Evening, Graves. Mind if we join your conversation?" Sampson stepped protectively in front of Amara and Eulalie. "You're trespassing. Just being neighborly." "Sheriff sent us to check on his investment." The leader's eyes fixed on Amara. Make sure she's not getting any foolish ideas. Amara forced herself to meet his gaze. These men had beaten her once for refusing to surrender her life's work. They'd do it again without hesitation. But something had changed since that night in San Francisco. She wasn't alone anymore, and she'd learned that sometimes the best defense was a calculated offense. "I'm not going anywhere." "Smart girl. Keep thinking that way and everybody stays healthy." After they left, the kitchen felt smaller, more dangerous. Eulalie's hands shook as she poured herself water. "They know we're planning something." "Maybe," Amara said, "or maybe they're just trying to keep me scared." Sampson checked the locks on both doors. "Either way, we're running out of time and options." Amara gathered her documents with new determination. Fear was a luxury she couldn't afford, not with 17 days left and everything she'd built hanging in the balance. Then we stop playing defense and start playing offense. Amara spread her business ledgers across Sampson's kitchen table like a general planning battle. Numbers told stories that words couldn't hide. Dawes had made one crucial mistake. He thought like a thug, not like an accountant. Every theft leaves a paper trail. Money has to move somewhere. She pointed to calculations scrawled on brown paper. If he's stealing businesses, he's moving large amounts through banks. That creates records. Sampson studied her figures. "You think you can trace where your restaurant money went?" "I know I can. The question is whether we can get the proof before his San Francisco associates arrive." Eulalie entered through the back door, her sewing basket covering a bundle of papers. "I got into Dawes's office again, copied what I could while his wife was at the church social. The documents she produced made them all go quiet. Bank transfers, property deed changes, business sale contracts, all bearing recent dates and familiar patterns. He's not just stealing from individuals," Amara said slowly. "He's stealing from the town itself." The evidence was damning. Dawes had been skimming from the municipal treasury for months. Tax money meant for road repairs had vanished. Funds earmarked for the new school had been redirected. Even the church building fund showed mysterious shortfalls. "Half the town council should have noticed this by now," Sampson said. "Unless half the town council is getting paid to look the other way," Amara replied. That possibility changed everything. If Dawes controlled the local authorities, conventional justice wouldn't work. They needed leverage that reached beyond Cedar Ridge. Amara's restaurant experience had taught her about federal regulations, interstate commerce laws, banking oversight. Dawes might control the local sheriff's office, but he couldn't control federal marshals. "We need to contact authorities in San Francisco, people who knew my business, who can verify what was stolen." "How?" "Dawes monitors all telegraph traffic through town." Eulalie looked up from studying the copied documents. "Not all of it. The railroad station in Millerville sends wires directly to San Francisco. It's only a day's ride." "Too risky," Sampson said immediately. "If Dawes realizes what we're doing, he'll move against us before any help arrives." "He's already moving against us. Those men last night proved that." Amara walked to the window. 14 days until the San Francisco meeting that would finalize her ruin. Every hour they delayed gave Dawes more time to cover his tracks. "I'll go to Millerville myself." "Like hell you will. It's my business he's stealing, Mr. Graves, my risk to take." Sampson's jaw tightened. "And my ranch he'll burn down in retaliation. My neck he'll stretch for harboring a fugitive." The argument might have continued, but Eulalie cleared her throat pointedly. Maybe we're thinking about this wrong. Instead of trying to outrun Dawes, what if we made him come to us? Both of them stared at her. He thinks he's got Amara trapped here. What if we use that confidence against him? Amara felt something click in her mind, the same instinct that had built her restaurant from nothing. You mean make him think he's won? Exactly. Let him believe you've given up fighting. Then when his guard is down, spring the trap. It was dangerous. It required perfect timing. But it played to their only real advantage. Dawes underestimated them. They spent the next 2 days creating a careful performance. Amara became more subdued around town, speaking in defeated tones about accepting her situation. Samson complained publicly about money troubles, hinting he might need to sell the ranch soon. Eulalie spread gossip about Amara finally learning her place, grateful for steady work and a roof over her head. The story reached Dawes within hours. Meanwhile, they refined their real plan. Amara would send coded messages through seemingly innocent supply orders. Eulalie would continue copying documents from Dawes's office. Samson would use his military background to coordinate their movements. The breakthrough came on Wednesday morning. Eulalie burst into the kitchen clutching a letter she'd intercepted from Dawes's mail. His San Francisco associates aren't just coming for your restaurant. They're planning to buy half the town. Amara read the letter twice. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Dawes had been systematically weakening Cedar Ridge's economy, driving down property values, forcing people to sell cheap. His associates would sweep in like vultures, buying everything at fraction of its worth. Your restaurant was just the seed money. They're planning to own this entire territory. Samson felt pieces falling into place. That's why he needs everyone to think you're broken. Can't have successful people giving others ideas about fighting back. Which means our little performance is working exactly as planned. That afternoon, Dawes visited the ranch with unusual good humor. He chatted pleasantly about the weather, complimented Amara's cooking, even offered Samson advice about improving his cattle yields. Glad to see everyone settling into their proper roles, he said before leaving. Makes life so much simpler when folks accept reality. After he rode away, Amara allowed herself a cold smile. He just made his biggest mistake. What mistake? He relaxed. That evening, they put the final pieces of their trap into motion. Eulalie would return to Dawes's office during the church service on Sunday, when both he and his wife would be occupied for hours. She'd photograph the most damaging documents with the small camera Samson had bought for ranch record-keeping. Amara would stage a breakdown, demanding to be taken back to San Francisco to sign over her restaurant personally. The emotional appeal would seem like desperate grasping from a defeated woman. Samson would reluctantly support her request, citing concerns about her mental state affecting her work. Just a worried rancher trying to manage an unstable employee. When they agree to the trip, we'll have them exactly where we want them, Amara explained, away from their power base, surrounded by federal authorities I've already contacted through coded telegrams. You sent telegrams? When? Tuesday. While buying supplies. Amazing how much information you can pack into a grain order when you know the right business codes. Samson shook his head in admiration. This woman had been playing chess while everyone else thought they were playing checkers. What if they don't take the bait? They will. Greed makes men stupid, and Dawes is very greedy. Sunday morning arrived with clear skies and perfect timing. As church bells rang across Cedar Ridge, 3 unlikely allies prepared to bring down a corrupt system that had thrived on darkness and fear. Amara straightened her simple dress and prepared to give the performance of her life. Sunday arrived with deceptive calm. While church bells echoed across Cedar Ridge, Eulalie slipped through the back door of the sheriff's office, her hands steady despite the risk. She photographed document after document with Samson's small camera. Bank transfers, forged signatures, correspondence with San Francisco associates. Everything they needed to prove the conspiracy. At the ranch, Amara prepared for the performance of her life. She mussed her hair, pinched color into her cheeks, and practiced the desperate tone of a woman at breaking point. When Samson saw her transformation, he almost believed it himself. "You sure about this? Acting broken got me this far. Might as well use it to get free." Dawes arrived shortly after the church service ended, bringing 2 deputies and wearing the satisfied expression of a man whose plans were proceeding perfectly. He found Amara in the kitchen, staring blankly at a pot of cold coffee. "Sheriff," Samson called him aside. "We need to talk about the girl." They spoke in low voices on the porch. Samson explained how Amara had become increasingly agitated, muttering about San Francisco, begging to go back and make things right with her former employers. Just yesterday she'd collapsed while cooking, sobbing about papers she needed to sign. "She's breaking down completely. Might do something desperate if this keeps up." Dawes listened with growing interest. A public breakdown would be perfect. Nothing discredited someone like obvious mental instability. "What exactly is she asking for?" "Wants to go back to San Francisco, says she'll sign whatever papers are needed to clear her record. Keeps talking about making amends." Inside the kitchen, Amara had begun her performance. She paced frantically, wringing her hands and speaking to herself about debts and obligations. When Dawes entered, she looked up with wild, hopeful eyes. "Sheriff, Mr. Graves says you might let me go back to San Francisco, just for a day or 2. I need to fix things, make things right." "What kind of things?" "Papers. Legal papers about the restaurant. I was so foolish to fight before. Now I understand." She clasped her hands together pleadingly. "I'll sign whatever they want. Just please let me go back and apologize properly." Dawes exchanged glances with his deputies. This was better than he'd dared hope. Having Amara voluntarily surrender her claims would make the theft completely legal. "It's possible, though you'd need supervision, of course. Can't have you running off again." "I won't run. I promise. I just want to make peace with everyone." The desperation in her voice was perfectly pitched. Dawes smiled and patted her shoulder condescendingly. "I'll consider it. Maybe arrange a trip next week when my associates arrive." After he left, Amara dropped the act immediately. Her wild expression vanished, replaced by cold calculation. Hook, line, and sinker. That evening, Eulalie returned with the photographed documents and disturbing news. She'd overheard Dawes talking to his wife about permanent solutions to loose ends. "He's planning something for after the San Francisco trip, something final." "Let him plan," Amara said grimly. "He won't get the chance." Monday brought unexpected visitors. A well-dressed man stepped off the morning stage, followed by 2 associates in expensive suits. They moved with the confidence of people accustomed to buying whatever they wanted. Dawes met them personally, all smiles and deference. From her kitchen window, Amara watched the reunion with interest. The lead man was older, silver-haired, with cold eyes that missed nothing. His associates looked like accountants, but their bulging coats suggested other skills. "Marcus Kane," she breathed. The name sent chills through her. Kane controlled half the corrupt businesses in San Francisco, from gambling halls to illegal labor contracts. If he was here personally, the stakes were even higher than she'd realized. That afternoon, Kane visited the ranch to inspect his prize. He studied Amara like livestock, nodding approvingly at her submissive demeanor. "This is the troublemaker who cost us so much time?" "Not anymore," Dawes assured him. Completely broken, begging to sign everything over voluntarily. Kane's smile was reptilian. "Excellent. Clean transfers are so much simpler than messy legal battles." He turned to Amara. "I understand you're eager to return to San Francisco." "Yes, sir. I want to make things right. Sign whatever papers you need." "Good girl. We'll leave tomorrow morning. Have this unpleasantness cleared up by evening." After they left, Samson found Amara sharpening kitchen knives with unusual intensity. "You're enjoying this. These men destroyed my life for profit. Forgive me if I don't feel charitable about their comeuppance. What if something goes wrong? What if your federal contacts don't come through?" Amara set down the knife and met his eyes. "Then I'll handle it myself." The next morning dawned clear and cold. Kane's private carriage waited outside the sheriff's office, flanked by armed guards. Amara climbed in, wearing her simplest dress, carrying only a small bag. To observers, she looked like a prisoner being transported for sentencing. Inside the carriage, Kane sat opposite her while Dawes took the facing seat. The two associates rode with the driver. Everyone was armed except Amara. "Comfortable?" Kane asked mockingly. "Yes, sir." "Good, because we have several hours to discuss your future, such as it is." As the carriage rolled toward the railroad station, Amara allowed herself to appear nervous. She fidgeted with her bag, glanced anxiously out the windows, and asked timid questions about the papers she'd be signing. Kane answered with cruel amusement, describing in detail how her restaurant would be carved up among his associates. The building sold to developers, the recipes stolen for competing establishments, her name blacklisted from every business directory in California. By tomorrow, it will be as if Amara Vallette never existed. "I understand, sir." But as the train station came into view, Amara saw something that made her pulse quicken. Federal marshals in plain clothes positioned around the platform. Her coded telegrams had worked perfectly. Kane noticed her sudden alertness. "Something wrong?" "No, sir, just nervous about seeing San Francisco again." "You should be nervous. This is where your story ends." Amara smiled for the first time since entering the carriage. "You're absolutely right, Mr. Kane. Someone's story is definitely ending today." The train whistle echoed across the valley as they approached the station. Amara straightened her shoulders and prepared for the final act of her carefully orchestrated performance. Kane reached for his gun as understanding dawned in his eyes. But it was already too late. Federal marshals surrounded the carriage before anyone could move. The trap was sprung, and this time, Amara held all the cards. Marshal Robert Chen stepped forward as Kane's hand froze halfway to his gun. 6 federal agents surrounded the carriage, their badges gleaming in the afternoon sun. Kane's face went white as recognition dawned. "Marcus Kane, you're under arrest for interstate fraud, conspiracy, and theft of federal tax revenue." Dawes lunged for his weapon but found himself staring down the barrel of a marshal's rifle. His deputies, outnumbered and outgunned, raised their hands without a fight. Amara stepped gracefully from the carriage, no longer the broken woman who'd entered it hours earlier. Her posture straightened, her voice carried authority, and her eyes held the steel that had built an empire. "Gentlemen, I believe you'll find all the evidence you need in Mr. Kane's briefcase, along with the documents I've been collecting these past weeks." Kane stared at her in shock. "You're supposed to be nobody, a defeated cook." "I'm Amara Vallette, owner of the most successful restaurant chain on the West Coast, and you just confessed to stealing it." Marshal Chen smiled as his men found briefcases full of forged documents, stolen property deeds, and detailed plans for the Cedar Ridge takeover. Everything they needed to dismantle the entire corruption network. "Miss Vallette has been working with federal authorities for months. Every conversation you've had with her has been documented. Every crime you've described has been recorded." Dawes finally understood the scope of his mistake. "You were never broken. I was beaten. I was threatened. I was transported against my will." Amara's voice carried quiet fury. "But broken? Never." As the prisoners were loaded into federal wagons, Marshal Chen handed Amara a leather portfolio. Inside were the restored deeds to all her properties, along with documentation of damages that would triple her original holdings. "Your restaurant is waiting for you, Miss Vallette, along with several new investors who are very interested in expansion." The train ride to San Francisco felt like awakening from a nightmare. Amara sat in a first-class compartment, wearing the elegant dress she'd hidden in her cook's bundle. She looked like what she'd always been, a successful businesswoman temporarily displaced by criminals. In Cedar Ridge, the arrests sent shockwaves through the community. Sampson found himself fielding questions from townspeople who suddenly realized their quiet cook had been someone extraordinary. The blacksmith who'd lost his shop discovered his property illegally seized. The former teacher learned her dismissal was based on fabricated charges. Eulalie became an instant celebrity, the brave seamstress who'd helped expose corruption. She parlayed the attention into a thriving business, with orders pouring in from surrounding towns. Her courage had transformed her from small-town seamstress to regional entrepreneur. 3 weeks later, Amara returned to Cedar Ridge for the trials. She stepped off the stage wearing a tailored traveling suit that cost more than most people earned in a year. The same townspeople who'd treated her with casual cruelty now scrambled to greet her with obsequious respect. She ignored them completely. At Sampson's ranch, she found him implementing all the improvements she'd suggested. The operation ran with military precision, costs had dropped dramatically, and profits were up 30%. He greeted her with genuine warmth, the only person unchanged by her revelation. How does it feel being famous? Exhausting, but profitable. She smiled and handed him a business proposal. I'm opening a restaurant supply company. Want to be my first cattle supplier? The contract terms were generous, guaranteeing him steady income for years. More importantly, it represented partnership between equals, built on mutual respect rather than circumstances. Why me? Because you treated me like a person when everyone else saw a problem to be managed. During the trials, Amara's testimony destroyed Cain's organization completely. Dozens of victims across 3 states came forward with similar stories. The federal investigation uncovered corruption reaching into state government, banking institutions, and railroad companies. Cain received 20 years in federal prison. Dawes got 15. Their associates faced sentences ranging from 5 to 12 years. More importantly, all stolen properties were returned to rightful owners, and victims received substantial compensation. The former blacksmith reopened his shop with federal assistance. The displaced teacher started a new school. Other victims rebuilt their lives with renewed confidence and legal protection against future exploitation. Cedar Ridge transformed from a corrupt backwater into a model community. New businesses opened. Federal oversight ensured fair law enforcement. The town council, purged of Cain's associates, implemented policies protecting individual rights regardless of background. 6 months after the trials, Amara stood in her flagship San Francisco restaurant, reviewing expansion plans. Her empire had grown beyond anything she'd imagined before the ordeal. Adversity had forged her into something stronger. A photograph on her desk showed an unlikely group: herself, Sampson, and Eulalie standing outside the courthouse after Cain's sentencing. 3 people from different worlds, united by shared principles and mutual respect. Eulalie's latest letter described her thriving business and engagement to the reformed blacksmith. She'd discovered that courage, once found, became habit-forming. Sampson's reports showed continued ranch improvements and growing prosperity. He'd become an advocate for fair treatment, using his influence to help other displaced people find legitimate employment. The story of the cook who owned a restaurant empire became legend throughout the territory. But for those who lived it, the real victory was simpler. Justice achieved through intelligence, dignity maintained under pressure, and community transformed through individual courage. Amara closed the letter and returned to her ledgers. Tomorrow brought new challenges, new opportunities to build something lasting from temporary setbacks. She'd learned that true strength wasn't avoiding defeat, but rising from it with purpose intact. Outside her windows, San Francisco bustled with evening activity. Inside her restaurant, customers enjoyed meals prepared according to recipes she'd protected through months of pretending to be powerless. Power, she'd discovered, wasn't what others gave you. It was what you refused to let them take away.